Welcome to the Living Out Loud show with Michelle Wadley and Alan Vukas. In each episode, we will explore practical spirituality through inspiring and enlightening conversations. Be a part of our weekly conversation with a rotating cast of speakers, teachers, and authors as we uncover and share spiritual, mental, and emotional tools to help you live your authentic life out loud now. Oh, well, welcome to another episode 12 of the Living Out Loud show. I'm Alan Vukas.
And I'm Michelle Wadley, and I'm so glad you're here with us again today for another episode of Living Out Loud. We are here to chat with you and have fun with you, and as we have fun with each other, bringing to you important and practical life skills for your life, to live your life full out in full expression. So we are so glad you are here today.
Yes, we are, and it's so good to see you again, Michelle. I love that we get to connect each week in this way.
Yeah, can't get away from me.
Well, you know what? We have not only enlightening and engaging conversations here during this time together each Wednesday during our show, but we also have fun, and that's important too. That's important too.
Yeah,
and
fun is good.
So here it's the beginning, for those of us, if you're new to our show here on the Living Out Loud show, each month we dive into another topic that is common to many centers for spiritual living around the world, as well as the Science of Mind magazine. We use the topic that can be found in each month's issue to support us in our weekly conversations to talk about it, unpack it, examine it, and pull some practical tools. And today, that's a new week, new month, new topic. And what are we talking about this month, Michelle?
Well, we're talking about the shadow, but I just put the website there if you feel compelled to, because we keep mentioning Centers for Spiritual Living, and if you go to csl.org, they have a spot on the front page of the website that says find a center near you, find a community near you. We come in many forms, so I just wanted to make that available. But we are talking about one of the single most important things that we could discuss as spiritual humans, which is the shadow. And what I love is that when I first started talking, learning about the shadow 20 some odd years ago, initially it was the shadow, even when it was presented to me and in the early conversations, was a very heavy subject, and it was dark, and it felt like it was all about what was wrong with me. And what I love over the last 20 some odd years is that the conversation has started to take in a new form, where we look at it as our shadow has our hidden values and our hidden potential and all of that. So I'm excited that we're going to spend this month both for many communities. Not all communities participate, which is, because we're unique, but to have that conversation on Sundays and to have it here with you. So looking forward to where we go with this. And I know it's always a surprise.
It is a surprise. And that's what's part of the fun here. And for everyone listening so the light within the shadows. The light within the shadows, and here today, in our episode today, was really we're going to be highlighting the inner and outer spectrums, of light, because isn't that a spectrum? Even the darkness, there's a light in the darkness, and darkness in the light. But we're using even this word shadow. We're using this word shadow. So 20 years ago, how was it defined? What's the definition? What are we going to be using as a definition for a shadow?
I'm going to make this up on the spot.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So for me, because I teach a course on the shadow. So the shadow is the gathering of all of your rejected and criticized parts that often you project onto others. The issue is that we don't notice it until we project it out. And then we get distracted because we think it's someone else. So
Mm,
the shadow is the gathering place of the parts of you that you have criticized and judged, you have found fault with within yourself, and so they hide. Those parts
mhm.
hide, and then we project them. That's how I see it. A very simple. I'm sure if Kathy Duca was back here with us this week, as it was such a great show last week, I'm sure that if she was here, she might have given you a much more sophisticated description. But I think this one works for for the common person, for the new student.
Yeah. So yeah, last week was great. That was an episode 11. If you go to our website at livingoutloud.show, you can subscribe there to get see previous episodes, the podcasts, and get the show notes because she just really gave some brilliant
Yeah.
insights around vulnerability. But as you were saying that, though, many times, yeah, I guess when the conversation on shadow comes up, we think dark. And
Hmm.
I also have been aware that there's also these light shadows as
Hmm.
well, the sort of
Hmm.
the flip side of it. So there are parts that we are rejecting, and in our rejection of it, it can be a shadow of light where we're trying to become something or reach for something. And so some of that, those can be things, shadows, light shadows that
Hmm.
drive us, as well as dark shadows that we try to avoid. With that, this sounds like a good place to um,
Well, you just presented something in a different fashion than I'm used to. I thought the direction you were about to speak about was where Carl Jung refers to the golden shadow. It's, for example, we often we are, I often want to just, bow at your feet for the amount of information and knowledge, and I'm always, always complimenting you. And so what happens though when we see somebody like that? Sometimes we think, oh, I can't be that good. But the truth is, if you are enamored with somebody, if you make somebody a hero or shiro, well, that's also you. That's also me. So that's the direction I thought you were going in, but you put a different twist on it. So I want to hear more from you of how
oh,
you see this piece. I
well,
want.
I think it's just intertwined. It's because it's flip sides of the same coin.
Mhm.
It's flip sides of the same coin. So in our effort, and so we're I wasn't planning on going anywhere except wherever we
Oh,
end
okay.
up. How about that? Wherever we end up. But I have heard of light shadows because so in a um yeah, so I I've shared this in previous shows. My mother told me, she told me once that she goes, you can never make up your mind. You can never make up your mind. You never can make up your mind. And so for many years, that was sort of a something that I would try to work against, and something to avoid, to not appear indecisive, because I had this operating belief that I'm that, and while trying to reach to because I'm believing I'm something I'm not, I'm
Right, right.
reaching for what's a light shadow. Those the things that we find so attractive many times in new lovers or new partners, those things that we're enamored with many times become the things that we if we go our separate ways, those things that we were attracted to end up
Mhm.
being the things that we can't stand. And
Well, okay, okay.
you
So
see, it's flip sides of the same coin. So if
So
we
what I want to tie that together for just for the new ear. So what you're actually saying, and I want the audience to catch this. So what happens is, even you're right, like you get attracted to someone because you think they have what you don't have. And so you see it in that person. But over time, if you don't embrace their quality, or if you don't express it from deep inside of you, you can become resentful and many other things. But you can become resentful thinking that this person has something you don't have. And so that's, just that's the practical way to look at it, instead of where if you're in relationship with somebody, you just live in the appreciation of the qualities they have, and realize that somewhere they live, this lives in me. It
Mm,
must live in me, you know.
mhm,
But that's a little bit further along the line, folks. If you know this, we're at the beginning of the month. Well, I guess we should treat everybody like it's a like you're a new mind. Some of you, of course, know exactly what we're talking about, but the fact remains that the way. Or let me give you a clue of where you'll catch this when you marry the same person over and over again,
mm,
or just date the same person, when you have the same kind of boss over and over again. Anywhere in your life where you find you're in that trend is a sign that something's up. That's
mm.
it's like a radar should go up where you say to yourself, huh, I need to pay attention to this because it's calling your attention. And that's the truth. It's calling your attention.
Yeah, and I wanted to share this quote from Ernest
Mhm,
Holmes. So in this teaching of science of mind or new thought, there's a fundamental premise that is really has changed my life, and I know yours too, Michelle, is that we're perfect, whole, and complete, right? We are all expressions of this one life, this one mind. There are no mistakes in us. Well, yet read a whole bunch of self-help books because there are things that we're trying to fix or things that we believe we need to become. But just wanted to share it because what you just shared is it we need it. This is all about us cultivating a relationship with ourselves.
mhm,
And what will we discover? So here's this quote from Holmes in this thing called life. And he writes this. He says, God, or spirit or source, or whatever name works for you, but God is an infinite presence and an indwelling reality. The silent whisperings of this inner presence come to each as a divine revelation, an inner communion of the individual spirit with the oversoul. And why I wanted to share that is that in this conversation throughout this month, that we whether we are here I go again, I'm marrying the same person, or how did I get here again, or I have to work this hard, or I
mhm,
should, those things that drive us
mhm,
is through practicing and going within to connect with that presence.
mhm.
We can hear the whisperings of the truth of who we are,
Yep,
not the shadow. There is light within the shadows,
yep,
and may we all be looking for the light through that inner communion. Yeah.
yeah. And a word I like to use now, and especially since I'm redeveloping a course where I combine the forgiveness and shadow work, the word I like to use now, even more than light, is there's power.
Mm,
And for some, the word power might feel offensive. It feels kind of strong, or like power over, and that's not what I mean at all. The power within the shadow is like this. It's like a bottled up piece of your energy that when that shadow is healed or integrated, because you can look at it in a couple of ways, that when it's healed or integrated, that pocket of energy, that power is freed. It's free so you can live with it as part of you, so that in your comings and goings, and in your seeking to demonstrate the life that you want, that additional pocket of power becomes part of your strength.
mm,
So actually, I guess what I'm saying is there's strength within the shadow. And but we get distracted by the pain. See, that's the thing. You have to be able to look past the pain and the discomfort. This is not an obvious or easy thing. But wherever you find, I was thinking, I know something just happened and I can't remember the story. Let's just stay within the country because it's most obvious here. We are filled Well, I don't want to get emotional, but I'm and you, the listener, and even Alan and I, whether you're realizing that there's probably a part of your system that's exhausted out of the news that continues to flow from around the country of horrific shootings, right? And like the one the other day where a neighbor went and shot someone's family. Like, my God. But what you're looking at, you are looking at someone who was held captive by the pockets of pain and didn't know how to settle the feelings. And when we don't know how to settle and we don't know how to recognize what's going on, we react or we explode or we become violent. All these things are ways that we react. So learning to appreciate the inner world, learning to find calm. And again, I've mentioned this before, Resma Menachem work in Your Grandmother's Hands, and learning to settle the body temple is so important. So when we heal the shadow, we have a more settled body, so that you and I can make decisions from love and our intelligence and compassion. It doesn't mean you have to like something. It doesn't mean you have to love everybody. You don't. But you'll have the power, the strength to simply walk away and not need to act out. I mean, road rage. Road rage is the constant buildup of stuff that we don't always pay attention to. And then all of a sudden there's an opportunity. And for some reason, individuals think, oh, well, it's okay just to act out. It's not. It's not, but I also understand.
And I want to, so, this, you raised an interesting point. And what comes up for me is, for many, and let me just speak from my own experience, is that some of the shadows and work that I've done within myself have had to be around letting my voice out. As far, because many on the spiritual path, anger can be something that we must avoid,
Good point.
I shouldn't be angry. And so in this conversation,
Yes, thank you for bringing this up.
right?
Thank
Because I don't want to put us in a place of where then it's like, oh, I need to be loving to everybody, and even when I'm having real feelings around that.
Right.
So what do we do with that? So the anger. So how can we not be using anger from a dark place, but from a place of power, like you mentioned?
Oh, well, thank you for bringing this piece up. First of all, it's about saying it's okay. First of all, and you said it already, it's okay to be angry. And it's really funny that I didn't bring that up, because I grew up where I felt like it wasn't okay to be angry at all. So I already had that conditioning in me. So it's okay that you're angry. Is a difference between being angry and acting out angrily. Those are two different things, because there are knuckleheads in the world. There's always going to be knuckleheads. You're going to run into knuckleheads either on the road or all over the place. But what you don't want is, you don't want to take this strength and this power that's living inside of you and have it be dispersed in an angry display, where now you've kind of diminished you. I handle my anger by acknowledging it, by being willing to feel it, by not making myself wrong, and then from a place of calm and settledness, decide how I want to go. I mean, and family relationships, right? Everybody's got, every year during the holidays, all the ministers around the world were always trying to support the members of our congregations to manage the upset and stuff that comes with being at a Thanksgiving table.
We got our own stuff. We're dealing with.
And face it, I mean, and some, because if you're listening to this podcast, it is highly likely that you walk a different path. And it's possible that you're looking to be fully, freely expressed. And maybe your sexual orientation is not something that your family approves of, but yet you feel attached to wanting to be around your family. Well, yes, you could just not go. You could just not go to the Thanksgiving dinner, and that's okay. But what does that do to you inside? That's the main thing. Because another option is to be there and not buy into it, to be there and not give them power, to be there and to speak for yourself, to just actually speak up and say, hey, folks, love me as I am. This is me. This is me. But we haven't learned those skills. The millions and millions and millions of people haven't learned those skills. So sometimes what I see happen, and I'm very sad about this, I will see somebody who will go to a dinner, who will go to a family event, and they come home and they're in pain. I mean, pain and anguish, like real serious stuff, because they couldn't be who they wanted to be with their family. And that's so incredibly sad. And some people, and I can't tell this story because it was a private story, but some of us have been damaged by very loving people who just didn't know what they were doing. And I'm talking about ministers and priests and nuns and loving aunts and uncles that just because they didn't learn. So basically they basically hand you their shadow. And if you don't know enough, you kind of say, okay, I'll take your shadow.
Sure. Well, how could we have known? I mean,
Right.
Dr. Holmes, says that as children, we're subject to the consciousness of those around us until we have our own, we have the power to make our own minds up. I'm paraphrasing. And so until then, we're just like, oh, yes, the world must be like that. My mother used to say, oh, everyone has an ulterior motive. This was something that she was such a lonely woman. She was lonely everywhere she went. In every crowd she went. And it was because of this message that she could not see past. And she gave me that message, and I had to live with that. And that's the importance of us discussing this and exploring these shadows, is because we are driven by them until we're able to reclaim our power or just bring light to them. And so that dinner you mentioned, I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go have dinner with them because they don't accept me. Well, I'm going to hang out over here in pain and suffer or to be present with them from a place of power can only be had with awareness. And realization. And so this is why, because it's not easy. So, why do we avoid looking at the shadows? Why do we avoid these things?
I actually want to. I'm happy to answer that question with you, but I want to. You mentioned something when you mentioned your mom, and CNN just put an article out yesterday about that the country is having an epidemic of loneliness.
Yes.
Wow. An epidemic of loneliness. So I can't quote anything else about it. I briefly read through it and didn't come away with many other facts at the moment, but and I'm sure that this is a direct result of, the COVID and the years that we had to, separate to stay safe. But I just wanted to say that. So for those of you listening, find a community.
Can we just pause right here? Because I'll come back to the question, why do we avoid? But with this in particular, I want to speak about, because I'm a middle-aged man. I fall into I'm in a certain demographic, and loneliness. There are men my age, 50 plus, that are dying either by their own hands, addiction, and drugs because of the ache of their souls of not having connection. And there was a study this week. because I did read the article, because my mother was lonely everywhere she went.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sensitive to that, and so I pick up on it. But there was a study that they come out and have shown that loneliness actually rewires the brain in
Mm-hmm.
ways that contribute to increased risk for heart disease, stroke, and dementia.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
so this is not, so it's not just loneliness, find a community because so that you'll feel better in your heart. It's so that you will live longer and be more fulfilled and
Mhm, mhm,
satisfied.
mhm.
And men, if you know a man or, encourage him, or if you're a man listening, uh, it's not easy. I know. It's not easy to connect. I know. And do it for yourself. Do it for those who love you and care for you so that
Yeah.
you may be happier and have a more fulfilled life. So why do we avoid? So I'm bringing it back. I'm bringing it back.
Oh, okay. I was going to give one more fact, but okay.
Oh, hit the fact. Go ahead. That's what we
Well,
do.
it's just, I want to requote, and I'm not quoting exactly, but the statistics in the book out of Mind Over Medicine with Lisa Rankin, when she said that being part of a community can add 7 years onto your life. That's for white people. It can add 14 years onto your life if you're a person of color. Those numbers are like, like mind blowing. 7 years, 14 years to be just because you chose to be part of something. So all of us who are living isolated, and then there's some of you who say, well, I like being alone. Well, that's different. If you
Mm,
feel full inside of yourself and it really truly is your place of comfort, that's not what we're saying. We're saying, I think what we're saying is stop silently suffering.
mm.
Stop the silent suffering.
It's a
It
pain.
might
Mm,
Yeah, and it might not be easy to reach out, as Alan has said. It might not be easy, but you deserve it. We each deserve to when you go to a concert, I haven't been to a concert in many years, but, they're always too loud. There's always the crowds going in, the crowds coming out. They're too expensive. The parking, right? There's all this stuff. But the powerful experience of being with thousands of people when you're at that concert and you're having that synchronized, joy-filled experience, that's the thing you get from being in community.
mm.
Is you get or being connected. Let's get away from community because I'm not
There
trying
you
to
go.
sell that.
Mhm.
But where you have a small group, in my community, there's a men's group that's happening on Sunday nights. And I know these men are now dedicated and it's not earth shattering, but they gather for about 60 to 75 minutes exactly for what you're saying,
Right.
exactly for that reason. And I know you have number of groups in your
Yes,
community,
yes. We have a
for
men's
that purpose.
breakfast. We have a
Yeah,
men's breakfast on second Saturday, and I'll tell you, and there are many who are not connected to the community proper, but they come for the men's breakfast where we get to just do a check-in and we're eating together. And
mhm,
but um, in that connection, we can be seen. I mean, we can be seen and be heard and belong. And I'm as we're talking, as I'm wondering, and I think I know the answer, but our shadows are part of what keep us isolated from others.
mm.
We're afraid that they're going to find out.
It's
The men-
our judgment of the shadow.
that's what, yes. They're going to, if they find out these things that's that are here, that I'm trying to keep hidden.
Right. If you knew me, you wouldn't really like me.
Mm,
So that's the whole imposter syndrome, which is rampant.
mm,
There's probably no person I've ever worked with that didn't at some point say to me, but if you really knew who I was, you wouldn't like me. And so we judge ourselves horrifically. We judge ourselves. And then once we judge ourselves, we believe in the judgment. And then as we're believing in the judgment, we guard, because I don't really want you to see my wounds. I don't want you to see the dark and heavy parts of me, right? So I hide. Um, and I'd love to pose this question. What if you could just, and we've dabbled in this last month with the vulnerability. What if you could just live an undefended life? Undefended, unexplained, just literally when someone offers you a cookie and you taste the cookie and you don't really like it, you don't have to pretend to like it. You say, yeah, thank you, not for me. I mean, that's a simple example, but what if we could love ourselves enough to speak our truth, even the most inconsequential moments?
Mm.
What a freedom.
Yes.
What a freedom that would be. My Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Am I willing to love myself enough to live with an undefended heart? Right, to be, and there is the caveat. There are those, I mean, Jesus said, "Don't cast your pearls before swine."
Yep. Uh-huh.
Right.
Yep.
So there are times where that's that where just don't let it all hang out, because there are people who have demonstrated that they are not
Right.
trustworthy with our hearts.
And whoever said the quote, once they show you who they are, believe them. I don't remember who that was.
Maya
I was going to say, was it Maya? If when people show you who they are, believe them. So you're worthy. While you're worthy, you don't place yourself and your fragile essence in the hands of someone who can't handle it. Don't, you just don't make wise decisions, make wise, not to back yourself into a corner. But for example, in the Centers for Spiritual Living, of which Alan and I are part of, we train that. I don't like that word. It sounds like I'm training a monkey. I don't, because it's not what I mean. We provide education to empower individuals to become practitioners of prayer. And so for me, that training transformed, it turned my inner stuff on end so that I could free it and let it be so. And so at least in these communities, there's an opportunity to meet someone and to have a prayer spoken for you, or to match up with a prayer partnership. We're doing a workshop. I'm doing a workshop this weekend, and it's Partners in Principle, which means a prayer partnership. And I speak always about the amount of prayer partners I have, because I want to keep interrupting my thinking. Because what happens is, if we don't interrupt it, we believe it. We believe we believe that the shadow is who we are. We believe that the pain is who we are. We believe that our self-criticism is real, and it's not. It's just not.
Mm-hmm.
But learning how not to believe that's a task. That's not a simple task, but that's a task.
It's the work. So there, areas of our lives in which shadows, so I mean, it's like, it's not just about anger or fear, but I mean, these show up in real tangible way, because relationships was one.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that's come up, oh, you keep finding the same partner or the same boss. You quit a job and you find another boss. But also, our relationship or how money, abundance, prosperity, shadows around that, or time, or how, I guess, what would be some practical demonstrations in other areas besides relationships? I guess it's
unrealistic fear that you can't, like, it's realistic to be fearful of a bear if you're in the woods. That's realistic. There are realistic times and that fear is to keep you safe. The whole fight, flight, and freeze is a survival thing, right? But many of us are walking around fearful when we can't explain why. We've
Mm,
adopted fears. So being unrealistically fear and reactionary around things, it, like someone says, it's smart to if you're going to jump out of a perfectly good plane and you're a little fearful. That's okay. You get that. You're jumping out of a perfectly good plane, but but many of us have fears that go above and beyond, and we can't quite figure out what they're from. And then what happens is um, the fear, if it's not challenged, we are not just afraid of that thing. So let's say I'm afraid of snakes, because that's a lot of people are afraid of snakes. But what happens is that fear, when we don't approach it to really wonder how realistic, especially if you're somebody who lives in the city, you probably shouldn't waste a lot of time being afraid of snakes. But that fear is not just hiding your fear of snakes, it's hiding something else from you. And
mm,
so when you find yourself unreasonably fearful of something, totally avoiding something, running away from someone, and when you notice your own behavior, um, if you're going to, I don't know about you, as an introvert, I do this all the time. I make an appointment with somebody, or I'll make a date to go out, or I'll say yes to a party, and then I don't even want to go because I really am an introvert, right? And so if you invite me to a party, don't be surprised if I'm sitting in your kitchen or just talking to a couple of people, because that's kind of my, that's my jam. But if I'm fearful, just pay attention to the fear and lovingly ask yourself, what do I need to know? Lovingly, without judgment, without criticism.
mm,
What do I
mm.
need to know? But we all have behaviors that cause us to go toward or to avoid something.
Yeah.
And that's often our shadow, manipulating us. Um, did you have
So
some
awareness. So awareness, I guess it keeps
yeah,
coming
growing
back
the awareness.
to
Yep.
going within, and the my go-to questions are, it's like, what do I need? What am I feeling first? It's like, what am I feeling? you know
Right.
my own experience and growing up was always paying attention and being on guard on what was going on around me, right? To react to
Mhm.
react, or be prepared, or to keep the peace. And so I became more attuned to other people's needs and wants
Yep.
rather than my own. And so it's a practice of mine. Is like, what am I feeling? What am I feeling emotionally? What am I feeling in my body? And then from that space, well, what do I need or want? What is being called for here? And it's like, if I'm feeling fear and then I find out I'm feeling anxious and afraid, and what am I, and what's that about? What Because I'm afraid of a snake that is
Right.
nowhere in the room, like what you were talking about?
Right. Uh-huh.
Oh, oh, you know, s
Love yourself enough to ask why. Love yourself enough for that.
yes.
Um, I want to I would like to read something. It's a tiny bit off topic, but it's not really. And it's part of the work that I do with individuals to embrace their shadow. So I'd like to just offer this. It's not too long. Um, and I can send it to you because I know Alan's going to ask me to send it to him so we can have it in the show notes. So I'll send you this script. I, Michelle, do now declare that I will never again use any words against myself, ever again. This day on May 3rd, 2023, is the day of my new beginning. Never again will I speak against myself. Never again will I entertain judgments against myself. Never again will I doubt myself, my qualities, my intelligence, my intuition. Now I begin to build new habits of thought. And it goes on a little bit more. The point of me saying this is you and I and every listener, we have to be a champion for ourselves, a true champion. So when we recognize the fear, when we recognize our avoidance, and again, that's raising our self-awareness, when we do all that, and then we just to lovingly settle back, to not believe it, don't believe the shadow. Don't give it power. Don't give it power if you think there's something wrong with you. Oh my God, there's nothing wrong with you. Please, dear God, don't entertain. Don't entertain those thoughts, and certainly don't let it out of your mouth, because by what we speak, we create our world. Our words create our world. So you and I can't afford. I mean, we want to recognize the shadow and honor the path it lands us on, and
Yes.
say, "Oh, thank you." Oh, so if I suddenly am challenged by my, a behavior of my husband, I could bitch, moan, and complain to him. I could bitch, moan, and complain about him. But if I want to release that strength or power that we're talking about that's hidden within the shadow, instead I'm going to say, what am I making this mean?
Mm.
What am I making this mean, that I'm feeling this way?
Mm.
And if you do that instead of actually believing it's someone else or it's something else, you will retrieve all this beautiful power and strength and self-awareness, and it will grow, landing you to live out loud and live fully expressed. And
Mm.
that's what this is about. That's what this show is about. That's what these
Mhm.
conversations are about.
Mhm.
You can tell
My,
I'm a little passionate about the conversation.
yeah, my hope is, and really, I guess my desire for, as we go through this month, it's light within the shadows,
Mm.
light within the shadows, because even as we're discussing them, and these shadows may be things that we avoid, or that we have been, either driving us or pushing us or pulling us, and um, we would not be who we are today without those,
Mhm, mhm.
without those. And so my mother telling me that you never make up your mind, I've come to realize is that, oh my gosh, I I make decisions about all sorts of things. And Michelle, you know me, I explore many different things. I'm like a
Yep,
perpetual
you do.
tumbleweed, and I
Yeah.
continue. And another one that she used to say was, oh, you never finish anything you start. And that used to just like, oh, I have to finish things.
Mm.
And then I come to realize that, oh, I finished the things that are important to
Yeah.
me.
Yep, yep. Mhm, that matter to you, yes.
You see, so it is, so these things that may have pushed us, we've developed coping mechanisms and
Mhm.
skills to survive in spite of, because of, and they've brought us to where we're at,
Yes.
poised and ready for what is next. And so this, we really, it's about integration, and
Yes,
and and,
integration.
and
Yes.
discovering the gifts that these shadows,
Yeah.
rather than them being, these ghosts, or um, there's power. I
Yeah.
like the word power. I like the word power, Michelle. There's
Yeah.
power there in them.
So I want to offer our listeners a mantra to keep them looking, and if you're listening but you're not watching, I'm pointing inward. I'm pointing to myself, because if we can do anything for you while you're listening, if we could do anything for you, it would be to support you in not thinking it's outside. So
Mm.
here's the mantra: there is no outside, there is no other. There is no outside, there is no other. Now, I will say to you, if you catch yourself furious at someone, furious at a politician, furious in the moment, it's going to be a little more difficult. But if you take it on as the mantra and you just keep going here and going back and going back, you will find inside of yourself this vast resource for brilliance that very possibly you haven't tapped. You didn't tap it because you might have just been too distracted.
Mm.
Oh, someone else said they love the word power.
Yeah, Judy. I was just looking at that, Judy.
Uh-huh.
Love the word power. Saying that back into our awareness, and I think we're getting a place to close, but just in that awareness, Howard Thurman. I
Mm,
see a quote from Howard Thurman here, going
love
back,
it.
yeah, who wrote, "In the stillness of the quiet, if we listen, we can hear the whisper of the heart, giving strength to weakness, courage to fear, hope to
Mm-mm.
hope to despair."
Yeah,
That just
beautiful.
follows up that mantra. There is no outside. There is no other. So as we listen within, we can find that strength
Mm.
and that courage and that hope.
And I want to encourage something else too. We some of us in spirituality went with and this ties into also about being lonely. Develop the muscle where you're willing to ask for help.
Mm,
Willing to ask for help, willing to ask somebody just to listen to you. Just to listen to you, just to be in your company if it's necessary. So while you're possibly investigating this stuff, that you can do it with surrounded by love. It's, I've stolen, you said something earlier, and I stole a process from the movie or greeting from the movie Avatar, the first one. And in Avatar, they don't really say, I love you. They say, I see you.
mm.
I find that to be incredibly powerful.
Is that goosebumps? Yeah.
Oh my God, yes. So when I do a baby blessing, the way I close the baby blessing is I ask the parents to hold the baby, and all the people who are witnessing will come up and say to the baby, I see you.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, I know, right? I know. As I told you, I just got chills myself. And what happens is the people are left in tears, but you watch this baby respond, and you're thinking, "Oh no, that's not really happening." But the baby responds. But and I recently did it this past Sunday. I did it on a Sunday celebration. It's not the big greeting and namaste, which is great.
Mm.
Not all those things, but it's I see you. I
Oh,
see you. And so, and I don't want you just to see, the surface of me. I also want you to see my flaws. I want you to love me past my flaws
mm.
and all of that. And when we say, I see you, we're helping someone to look past, to look past.
I'm going to have to borrow that.
Please do.
So if anyone's from my center at Concordia Center for
Let
Spiritual Living
me,
here in
let
Rhode
me
Island,
forewarned.
yes, if you hear this, you'll know where I got it from. Thank you, Michelle, and thank you everyone for listening to this. Oh, I'm looking forward to the rest of our conversation this month. There's going to be some yummy stuff, and next week we are going to be having joining us. She wrote the article in this month's Science of Mind magazine on beginning on page 28, called Light Within the Shadows. But Reverend Susan, I'm sorry, Reverend Sunshine, talking about light within shadows. So Reverend Sunshine Michelle, who is also the spiritual director and senior minister at Oakland Center for Spiritual Living in California. Also the
I
founder.
think a new senior minister there. So
Yes, she is,
congratulations.
they're at that location because they have quite a history, Oakland CSL, and she's
I've
also
been there. I've spoke there, and I've done work there. It's a beautiful building, beautiful community. Anybody in the area, if you're looking for a community, it's a beautiful community.
So she's going to be joining us as our guest next week and sharing some of her insights and the article that she wrote this month in the magazine. And so we're looking forward to welcoming her next week as our special guest. And so
Beautiful.
I'll make sure to join us next Wednesday at 12 noon and go to our website as well. You can subscribe and receive notices of when we are having the upcoming show and the show notes, because I've made a couple notes. You referred to a couple things there, Michelle.
Mhm.
The Mind Over Medicine. There were some books and references and things. And Michelle, where can people find you at?
Oh, I don't know. I am at thank you. I'm at Planned Happiness Institute or the Center for Spiritual Living, North Jersey. We are currently um, being beautifully gifted the Temple for Benai Kashet in Montclair, New Jersey. They are a lovely, lovely host community, and we are just having a grand time. And I could tell you, people are just loving reconnecting again. We missed each other's physical presence so much.
Mm,
So that's where you can find me. And you, where can
yeah.
they find you?
So if you're on Facebook, you can find me at Rev Alan Vukas. You can look me there, or also find Concordia Center for Spiritual Living on Facebook. It's Concordia CSL or concordiacsl.org. Anything Concordia CSL, you'll find us somewhere. And also you can. I write occasionally some thoughts and meditations and what's going on at newthoughtnewlife.com. And so you can check me out there. And so, Michelle, would you like to pray, or I pray for us as we wrap up this first episode and this whole topic for this
You
month?
know me, I always say yes. So
All right.
if
Well, then
like
I'm going to take that as a yes.
you are
And
all right, all right. Oh, please, let's take a breath together, the breath that connects us to all that is by any name. Let us connect to the feeling of the vibration that moves through everything and everyone in every moment. And let's call that vibration love and call it good. And let us allow that vibration to be an invitation to break loose from our conditioning, to find freedom, freedom of our voice, freedom of our expression, free to be who we choose to be in the most good and glorious ways. Oh, life is good. Life is juicy. And as we allow and embrace this into our own beingness, it is with gratitude that I release this word and I simply allow it to be so right here and right now. And so it is.
so it is. No outside, no other. Here it
Yes.
is. Thank you. Oh,
Massive love to you.
thank you, Michelle. And thank you, each of you who've been watching us today. We look forward to seeing you next week for another episode of the Living Out Loud Show. Peace and love. Namaste.
Namaste.